Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Charmers Familiar Possessed Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile for post Rising Rampage. With the release of Rising Rampage, we received the latest for the Charmers and the Familiar Possessed line of Link monsters, being Win, the Win Charmer. So now I decided to do an update to the deck. I decided to more focus on the two Link monsters we have for the deck, being Hita and Win. So making the sole focus their own monsters as well. I think I'll add on more for the deck to the other Charmers and Familiar Possessed when we get their respective Link monsters, or if we get the spell card, which is still only available in the OCG for the deck, because it is a big help with all the plays you can do for the Charmers in total. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So to start off for the Charmer monsters, like I said, I'm focusing solely on the Hita and Win support. For this deck profile, I just find it to be the most consistent. That gives me two attributes to work with, Fire and Wind. And with the Charmer monsters, when this card is flipped, you can take control of one Fire monster on your opponent's side of the field for as long as this card remains face up on the field. So as long as you have this card and you flip it face up, you can take one of your opponent's Fire monsters. I definitely would say they gave us two of the hardest Charmers to work with when it comes to taking your opponent's monsters. Compared to, like Earth, Light, and Dark monsters, there are less situations when your opponent has a Fire or a Wind monster. It comes up sometimes, especially with Hita, when you're going up against Salamangreats, being able to take your opponent's Salamangreat monster and use it as your own, depending on, like resources or something like that. So focusing on the three Hita, I also have other methods to give your opponent Fire monsters, and we'll get to that later on in the deck profile. And also I am running three Win, the Win Charmer. Same effect as Hita, just being for Win monsters, which also we've received a good amount of Win support as of late, including the new Simorg monsters. Harpy's got some new support added with their Link monster. Overall, Tempest coming off the ban list. So, you have sort of options to take your opponent's Win monsters depending on the deck you go up against. But same play mechanics as Hita, just having the take control as long as it's face up on the field. For the flip effect, I'm running max 3 for each because you need them for the upcoming monsters, which are Familiar Possessed Wind. I am running 2 of this card. You can special summon this card by sending a Win, the Wind Charmer, and 1 Wind monster from your side of the field to the graveyard. And also, when it attacks, if it was special summon this way, you can have it inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. It's an 1850 attack point monster. Definitely comes in handy with another monster we have in the deck, but also just able that you're summoning this from the hand or deck is a big bonus, meaning you can have your Win or Hita, depending on which one you have on the field, and then be able to get your special summon. Now, Win works obviously with Win, the Wind Charmer, and then I also run the 2 Familiar Possessed Hita, which works with Hita, the Fire Charmer. So I decided to stick to these numbers being exactly the same. Depending on which one you open up is a definite help for sure. And like I said, you're limited only for the effect. If you special summon this card, you can obviously still normal summon it and then use it with some of the other cards in the deck, including the Unpossessed Trap card that works with the Familiar and the Charmer monsters. And also, for a little more added monster support, I run 3 Fairy Tale Luna. When this card is normal summon, you can add 1 Spellcaster monster with 1850 attack from your deck to your hand. And once per turn, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. Your opponent can send 1 card with that monster's name from their deck or extract to the graveyard to negate this effect. Otherwise, return both this card and that monster to the hand. So you're able to search out your Familiar Possessed monsters with this card. So it's a definite help for that search. Being another strong powerhouse monster at 1850 attack is a big help, depending on if you want to go up against some of your opponent's strong monsters. But the bounce effect also, if you're working with limited monsters on your opponent, can take care of a lot of problematic cards on your opponent's side of the field. I know with a few practice games, being able to take care of Electromite, bounce it back to the extra deck definitely comes in handy at times, depending on what you're going up against also. And I also wanted to stick to sort of like a hand trap lineup that works with the Fire and Wind. So I'm running the 3 Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. I ran this one in the previous deck profile as well. Just being a fire monster gives me that additional option with Hita, so I can summon out the Familiar Possessed Hita, having another fire option if I do need it on the field, if none of my other monsters came in handy. But also just having this hand trap option to shut down my opponent's plays is a big help. And as a final wind option, I am running 3 Droll and Lockbird. Just being able to stop your opponent's searches after they add a card is a big bonus, but also obviously running this card for the fact that it is a wind monster. When we get different familiar possessed, I'll consider other, charmer monsters in the deck to work with as well, with the different, types and attributes for the hand traps, because I feel like a spellcaster lineup would definitely be beneficial as well, depending on what you wanted to run. And the biggest problem I saw with the deck was obviously having my opponent have, the proper attribute for me to take control of. So I'm running a kaiju lineup, so 2 Dogoran, the Mad Flame kaiju, since the fact that it is a fire kaiju, being able to special summon this to my opponent's field, then take control of it with Hita is a big added benefit for this card. With that. And also I only have the 1, so I would take out the 1 Jizukuru I have in here for a second Gardarla. This is the wind one, so works with wind, the wind charmer. Having both the fire and wind options for the kaiju monsters makes so I can tribute my opponent's monster and then easily take this kaiju depending on which charmer I have set on the field, and then when I flip it face up. And that is it for the monsters. When I move on to the spells, I had a good amount of, just consistency, having the equal amounts of fire, wind, working together with the different charmer ratio. I was definitely more excited when the fact that I would be working with just 2 of the charmers in the deck, since I didn't have to focus on all 6 for the, cards to work together. I definitely do like the results just working with wind and Hita for this deck profile. But for these spells, I run 3 Secret Village of the Spellcaster. If you control a Spellcaster type monster, your opponent can activate spells. If you control no Spellcaster, you cannot activate spells. Shuts down your opponent, especially depending on the type of deck they are using. Just having them not able to activate spells is a big hindrance on their part. So I definitely like to run this with all the different, charmers and familiar possessed being Spellcaster monsters to use in the deck. And also for these spells, just for a few one-ups, I run 1 Monster Reborn and 1 Terraforming for the Searching for the Secret Village, and just so I can get some easy special summons from the graveyard back onto the field to use. And that is it for the spells. Moving on to the traps, I run 3 Unpossessed. Charmer monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. And if a familiar possessed monster you control attacks an opponent's monster, it gains 800 attack during damage calculation only. And if a monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon 1 spellcaster monster with 1500 defense from your deck, whose attribute is different from at least one of those destroyed monsters' original attributes on the field in attack position or face down defense, and you can only use this effect of Unpossessed once per turn. So obviously it gives you that added bonus, so you can go and special summon your charmers face down to use on the field whenever you lose one of your monsters. But the added boost to your familiar possessed monsters also helps, putting them at 2650, and they can hit a good amount of monsters swinging over them on your opponent's side of the field. So definite 3 of in the deck for sure. Like I said, I'm definitely excited for when we get the spell deck, the spell card for the deck. It'll be an added benefit for more plays we want to do. And I also I'm still debating how many DNA transplant I want to run. It changes the attributes of your opponent's cards. Sadly, I only have the 1, but it makes the tribute you declare, and then as long as it remains on the field, the attribute of all face-on monsters on the field become the one you declared. So it works very, very well with your fire and wind charmers being able to take control of all your opponent's different monsters. So if I were to up the number of DNA transplant in the deck, I would change the number of Storming Mirror Force, which is more of just a defensive card against my opponent, to, coincide with the number of DNA transplants I wanted to add into the deck. So the more DNA transplants you want, take out that number with the number of Storming Mirror Force you have in the deck. And finally, just for a little more defensive trap lineup, I am running a small Solemn Brigade, so I run the 2 Solemn Warning. I run the 2 Solemn Judgments just as added, bonus protection, along with the 2 Solemn Strikes. You don't really use your life points for anything in this deck, so having the Solemn Brigade, lineup in here for you to use definitely does help when you're going up against some of your bigger opponent's monsters that, your Charmers and your Familiar Possessed can't, handle or take care of. And that is it for the main deck. When I move on to the extra deck, I run 2 Hita, the Fire Charmer Ablaze. Your Fire Charmer to go to, you need 2 monsters, including a Fire monster, so very easy to make this card. And it's always treated as a Familiar Possessed card as well. You can target 1 Fire monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon it to a zone this card points to. And if this link summon card is destroyed by battle or is destroyed by opponent's card effect while in the owner's monster zone, or you destroyed by opponent's card, you can add 1 fire monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hand. You can only use each effect of Hita, the fire charmer Ablaze, once per turn. But the search effect, obviously, with the 1500 or less defense, is meant to go for your monsters that you run in the deck, being able to search out either of the options with your Hita Link monster for your other monsters in the deck. So I like to run 2 of this, and also 2, which I just dropped the extra deck all over, so give me a sec to reorganize, but very easy fix. The Wind Charmer Verdant. With this one, it is the same effect as Hita, just for wind monsters instead. Also just name 2 monsters, including a wind monster, so once again, easy to make in this deck, and just a great option for having the same familiar possess. So the quicker you can get out your Link monsters, the easier you can make use of, and also just being able to take your opponent's wind monsters and use them for your own plays is a big help as well. And then for the rest of the extra deck, I run 1 Clara and Rushka. I like this card. You just need 1 normal summon or set monster, and it cannot be Link summon except during main phase 2. But if you have a set Charmer card on your field, you can easily just use it for the Link summon of this card, then use some of your other ones for the additional Link summon options, depending on the plays your opponent may take. And also 1 Akashic Magician, 1 Underclock Taker, 1 Great Fly, and 1 Doolittle Chimera. That helps for the boosts with some of your other cards as well. And 1 Topologic Trisbana, 1 Borreload, 1 Topologic Bomber Dragon. And then for the Exceed plays, we have plenty of level 4 and level 3 monsters. So 1 Tornado Dragon, 1 Castel, and 1 Leviair. Kind of stuck to the wind monsters for these cards, but you could obviously also mix in a few fire tribute monsters if you wanted to swap out for these. I just like the options for Tornado and Castel, and just an added bonus that they were wind altogether. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.